So I think unless you've been living under a rock, you know that there's been a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's been in the news, and if you're someone like me, I watch the news and I'm wondering, hey, what's real, what's not real, right? One political party is saying this that's going on in Ukraine. The other is saying this. Who do you believe? Who do you want to believe? The media is corrupted. You go to social media to get the answers, and what does social media do? Social media comes out with AI, and it puts AI on the docket for you. So for guys like me who went to public school and not very smart, and I watch this stuff, I don't want to fall for it. And I think the answer to these questions into diving into Ukraine would be to bring someone who's been there, talk to someone who's actually been there and walked in the soil and been with the people, and not trust Western media's take on it or spinning on it. And also recognize, and I'll kind of say this about Ukraine up front, the history of Ukraine is, our country is very young. We're like an infant compared to that part of the world. I mean, I think it goes back to 32,000 BC, where I've read that the East Slavics were kind of in that, and poor Ukraine has been war-torn from being ruled by Lithuania and Austria and the Ottoman Empire to the Tsardom of Russia, and then Russia invasion. It's like, then they get their independence, and then they have corruption, and then it's like this poor nation just keeps taking it in the chin. And so I've just always been curious. It's like Ukraine's all over the news. We don't get a lot of information on it. We get knowledge, but we don't get understanding. And I think that today, I think bringing in Pastor Paul Cheatham from it's Advance the Kingdom. So I want to make sure I got that right, from Advance the Kingdom, who has been there before the invasion. I think you were there during the invasion, and you're going back.
Continuously go back.
Yeah, continuously go back. So Mission Liberty's mission, if you will, was to bring things like that to the viewer, so that we can share personal things to get us to understanding. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Pastor Paul Cheatham and say I've known you for years and respect you. And I was like, when this subject came up, we started to think about it. I was like, I gotta give my buddy Paul a call and see if you'll grace us with your presence. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, definitely. So can you give us first of all, let's get just an idea of what you've done for the Ukrainian people, and then, give us a brief history, or just kind of catch the audience up on what's going on in Ukraine, and then we can really dig down into what's going on.
Well, obviously, I want to preface everything by saying I am actually not an expert and on all that's going on. I know what I know from relationships with the people. I know what the people are saying and what the people are reporting and what's going on. And so when it comes to the terms of what really is happening politically behind the scenes, I have no clue. And I have no comments on that. But my relationship with Ukraine started back in 2008. I went over, was invited by a pastor who is in the port city of Odessa, which Odessa is actually a beautiful resort town on the Black Sea.
Yeah, not to be confused with Odessa, Texas.
Well, but interesting enough, Odessa, Texas is named after Odessa,
is it?
Ukraine. Yes.
Okay.
Look through that. You can Google that and find out that Odessa, Texas was named after Odessa, Ukraine.
For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can get early access to podcasts just like this one and so much more at missionliberty.com. Dive deeper into sports, leadership, conspiracy theories, and conventional wisdom with new podcasts posted daily. Go to missionliberty.com to subscribe today.
So I started going in by invitation from them, teaching some seminars and that I regularly teach, and then we just developed a relationship. And they just continuously had me to come back again and again and again. But because of their relationships with other churches, other congregations, pastors, that began to grow.
Okay.
And we not only went in Odessa, we were in towns north of Odessa, Chernomorsk. We were in Nikolaev, been there regularly, which is about 2 hours. 2 hours if the road is good. A lot longer if they, and this happens if they haven't repaired it, to the east of Odessa, and then up in a kind of a north western town as Ukraine begins to curve over towards Poland, Mamnetsky and several little towns and communities outside of it. I even went to some of the small villages that are under the boot underneath Moldova because they had a relationship with this pastor. He said, nobody ever, these Americans, when they come, nobody ever comes out to us. Wow. Would somebody be willing to come out? And so they asked me, I said, I sure went out there. I had the small little village congregation where the churches were only like 50 or under, but I had a blast doing that. So I was out there for a season, did some ministry there. And then I went far east as Zaporizhia and Dnipro. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing that regularly, number of times a year. Even in COVID, I was able to get in because Ukraine was not strict on their COVID regulations, and we found a way to get in through Warsaw if you didn't have to come into the country. In other words, you just transfer over into the adjoining flight, and so we were able to do that even during COVID. But then, since then, and since the war, we've been in multiple times. A little harder to get in because you can't fly in. Wow. But we've done that multiple times. So we'll be going back.
So you can't fly.
Can't fly in. Well, once the war started, they destroyed the airport, the runway, and then of course all air flight has been canceled, other than the military. Well, it's a hop, skip, and a jump because the closest airport to Odessa would be Chisinau, Moldova. Okay. And so I've got to fly into Moldova, which is not a direct flight by anybody's means. So I'm hopping here and there. And then then when you get to Moldova, they've got to drive in from Odessa to pick me up. And that can be anywhere from a 3 to 5 hour drive simply because of the border crossing and that kind of thing. Yeah. You never know. And then, so normally I do, I'm doing an overnight in Munich, and then Munich, I'm hop skipping to Vienna, then over to Chisinau, do an overnight there. And then they come pick me up early. They leave early that next morning, but it's noonish or later before and then we drive back in to Odessa, get there that night. And it's not an easy thing. It's really time consuming now to get in, but you can get in.
Definitely. So what exactly are you doing there with the people of Ukraine?
Well, I've just been ministering there with them for a long time. And like I said, there's certain seminars that I teach regularly. I think you guys are going to have me on a podcast later about dream interpretation. We do some teaching and training on dream interpretation. We also do some introductory material on prophetic ministry, how to hear the voice of God, how to minister prophetically, things like that. And then I pastored for 32 years. So I can minister. Usually, you can minister and teach on most any topic,
right?
And so we do that. And as the things have expanded, I teach in some schools. I've taught in some seminaries. There, different courses and such. And so it's just whatever the need is at the time.
Yeah. That's great. So I think one of the things that is lost in a conflict like the Russian-Ukraine thing is we look at the headlines. We think, what is Putin doing? What's Zelensky doing? But the one thing that we constantly forget about is the people.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are caught in the crossfire. Yeah. So what do the people believe, in your opinion, is Russia's motivation for this conflict? Okay.
So you have to go back to about 2013 when the then president, I don't pronounce his name correctly. I've got it written down so I can. Viktor Yanukovych.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So people who watch your podcast, please don't.
There's no fact check.
That guy messed that name up. That guy messed that name up. I probably will. The people themselves, were dependent, former Soviet state, okay, but they're still so dependent upon Russia's gas and, and all of this and many things like that. And it was kind of, in those days, when I went in 2008, in some places, I thought I was walking, and of course I didn't live during this time, but I thought I was walking into the 1940s in the United States. We were talking about, just so well, you've seen the pictures.
Pretty antiquated.
Of the Ukrainian grandmothers with the scarves and these coats that were used years. Okay. And so it was really impoverished. And that was true. It was very much true. The poor were poor and the rich were rich. So there was corruption. There was corruption. Everybody knew it. The powers that be, somehow they would consume some of the money, even if money was sent in, so they capture it. Just like my people, friends there, we had people supporting them financially, and a lot of times they wouldn't get what was sent to them because it was intercepted. But nonetheless, the people were dissatisfied because their gas bills were so high and things like that. And so there was a movement among the people, can't we do better than this?
It sounds like America today, huh?
Can't very well be.
Yeah.
So there was this push then to look into becoming part of the EU. And so when they began to pursue that, it got to the point where they were going to attempt to move forward on that. And so the president backed off. He backed off of signing the EU agreement. That was like November 2013. Well, that's what started this, what eventually was called the Maidan. And it's spelled like what we would spell Maiden, but it's called Maidan. And people began to protest because the people were wanting to pursue this relationship with the EU. And so you have to understand, and I will get a little political here, most all the former Soviet states were still in some form of relationship with Russia. Mm-hmm. Sure. And even to the point where some of them basically were like puppets of Putin's. Mm. And, and I think this is common knowledge today, the president there, Belarus pretty much is. Yep. He's in his pocket. Yep. And most people don't know, but there's a Russian military base in Moldova. On their eastern side. It's basically a protection over some pre-Soviet or the Soviet Union days of a military or armament is there, and they protect it. But yet there is a Russian military base in Moldova.
How about that?
So anyway, this protest, and everybody remembers that, how the people rose up, and then they were oppressed by the police. There was riots. Then they came back, and it was called the Revolution of Dignity, where everybody began to just rise up and strongly protest. More of the college-age kids, and the military police fired on them. Over 100 people were killed at that. Wow. And so all of a sudden you've got some serious stuff going on in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So what the people say is that Putin understood that the true Russian people were being oppressed by these who had changed their hearts about Russia, and he wanted to liberate the Russian people who had a heart for the mother country.
Okay.
That's kind of where all of this kind of began to get started. And so even back in those years, I went in one time into Odessa, and the pastor there said, we might be leaving here by the end of this week. I said, what's going on? He said, well, the town's been infiltrated by a bunch of people out of Russia. They've been kind of nonchalant about it, try to mix with the people, but the security guards at night get to talking, on the streets and downtown. And what they discovered is they're all asking the same questions. Okay. And the question was to young men, if the Russian army invaded Ukraine, would you fight for the Russian army?
Oh boy.
Oh, wow.
I had an interpreter over at the Nikolaev area. His grandfather had been part of the Russian army, and he actually received a letter from them asking the same thing.
Wow.
Okay. So you knew then.
Yep.
Putin's up to something.
Yep. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
And so I think he discovered that they discovered the greatest support, because here in Ukraine, they spoke, different parts of Ukraine spoke different languages. Parts of it spoke Russian, parts of it spoke Ukrainian. So his assumption then is the people who are speaking Russian are, the sympathizers towards Russia. Yeah. And so that's why then in the Crimea thing, man, they just walked right in. Yeah. Because they weren't expecting it. They didn't have a defense against it. They laid their arms down, and all of a sudden, Russia now occupies Crimea. Up for debate whether it was done correctly or not, whether they should have it or not. It was agreed upon that they shouldn't, but it was all said and done. It's a done deal. And so then, as things progressed, it was in 22.
Yep.
That they finally moved in on the eastern side. Well, they pushed in so quick that there were Russian sympathizers. There were people,
sure,
as he suspected, that wanted to stick with Russia. But the sentiment people that I was around in all of those previous years was, we don't want to go back to Soviet Union days. We don't want to go back to Soviet Union days. We are so much better off. We don't want to go back. But when they moved into the eastern side, they quickly took up massive territories. Normally, it's referred to as the Donetsk area. There's a town called Donetsk over there, and then when the sympathizers gave in to that, people began to evacuate and move west quickly. Pastors were not tolerated. Churches were not tolerated.
Okay.
They began to go into churches first. Say, why? Because you're not Eastern Orthodox. So the considered the Western. And here's your other thing.
Yeah.
Here's your other thing. We got a big divide between Eastern and Western. As you know, Putin is Eastern Orthodox, and he thinks that the Western Christianity is what is the word that he says he uses decadent.
Oh,
That we embrace decadence because the Western countries allow so much decadence.
Here's an aside. Have you seen Putin's house?
Decadent.
I would call it decadent. That's what I would call it.
Exactly. But that's his assumption.
Is there any difference in the beliefs between the Russian and
Oh,
Orthodox?
there are. For me to unpack that, we'd have to really have a whole discussion on Eastern versus West. It goes all the way back to the initial schism between the Catholic Church back in its early years. And I don't know if you remember when the capital was moved, where it went east and west. Let's just say that. And so there's quite a bit of difference there. So
I remember when it was Kiev, and now it's Kyiv. What happened? What happened?
I haven't figured. The people just say that's a more Russian pronunciation.
Is that what it is? Because there was also Qatar when I grew up.
Well, that's
what happened?
Well, that's just like Jaguar and Jaguar. I don't know who makes that.
So when the Russian invasion occurred, and where were you? Were you stateside? Were you there? Like when were you there?
Well, I was there, probably not the day of, but I was there afterwards because at that point, once again, it's mainly Eastern. And so at that point, there was not necessarily any fear, at least from the people's perspective that were inviting me in to come. And so I came in, just like I was telling you earlier, I ministered in Nikolaev, which is closer to that Donetsk region. And even on a Sunday that I was there, it was a good sized church. It's church 1,500, and there's a good sized church. They met in the theater there in town. And as soon as I finished, they called me backstage and said, "Would you come and minister to this family? It's a pastor's family that have just escaped and moved for fear of their life." And they've just arrived here, and they're just disheveled. Would you come and just kind of talk to them and minister? And I did. And poor little, your heart breaks. They lost everything just like that, and their lives were in because it was reported that some of the pastors were imprisoned immediately, and then eventually some even lost their lives.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah. So, but that was going on, and they began to push, and so the Russian sympathizers joined them. So they began to push. But they were only able to push so far into that eastern edge. I had ministered in Zaporizhia and Dnipro, and now that they pushed even beyond that section. In fact, I had obviously canceled those trips, future trips, because then it became because they were leveling everything on the eastern edge.
Were they only in the eastern, or were they firing missiles into Odessa, into Kiev?
They didn't initially.
Okay.
Now they did, like I said, take out like some infrastructure.
Okay.
And then of course at the Odessa airport they bombed the runway. Yeah, they did things like that, but that was about it. Okay. And you really didn't hear
tactical infrastructure.
Yeah, okay. and even up in Kiev, they weren't really doing anything yet. Most of the military push was on the eastern. I think, again, I don't know. I can't think of what they were thinking, but they just thought they were going to move and just mow down the whole country. Okay. Well, and so then all of a sudden Ukraine rises up, begins to fight against them. They didn't think they had the aptitude to do it, or the military power, or the equipment, or anything, and they brought a halt to it for a while. and just kind of stalemate for a while there on the eastern edge. But then they began to push forward and push all the way over to what we call the Kherson region, the Kherson Oblast. Oblast is what we would use for a county name. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
for a what now?
Oblast. In other words, a
county.
Kherson or a province, province within inside the nation. Okay. Gotcha. And so the Kherson, they came in, they moved up to it. But you're talking about shifts or changes. Okay. That was very devastating for them to push in that far. Right. But then something shifted.
So here's what's interesting to me. So the Russians thought they were going to just hot knife through butter through Ukraine because they had intel beforehand talking to the youth. But the Ukraine, from what I understand, is the 8th largest army in the world. So it's not a pushover. It's anything. And it's one of the largest drone fleets in the world.
I know that. It's the 8th largest army in the world?
8th largest army in the world, from what I've seen.
It's current, though.
Current.
I don't know.
Oh, it's built to that now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they could employ the draft early on. It wasn't initially.
I got you.
I don't know the time frame on it where they did finally employ the draft, and so every eligible
Well, this
man
is happening on to we.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Right.
Yeah. Because when it started, when the invasion started, and they knew it was an all-out war, there were 1 million refugees in 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. They moved into Romania, Poland, Germany, and now they've a group of them have gone even as far as the United States and even up into Canada. And within a month, it had risen to 2 million.
Okay.
People just were out of here.
Gone.
Yeah. And so some of them got out before the draft was employed. And then they finally did implement the draft. But but here's what happened. I mean, nobody really expected it, and they began to push back, and they took back over Kherson. And so that was the victory. For them, that was a major turning point. For them, it was like, we've got hope.
Yep.
We can possibly win this thing.
Yep. Yeah. And Ukrainians have always been right. There's a whole uprising of the hero city of Kiev and all this, but supposed to be, I don't know, I wasn't there, but everything would indicate that these are some pretty rugged fighters. Like you kind of may not want to tangle with some of these guys.
Up there.
Sure.
I mean, it gets cold up there. This Texas boy don't like that cold. Those people got to be tough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things is, like I said, there's pockets of Russian speaking, pockets of Ukrainian speaking. In fact, the Odessa area is Russian speaking, but they're not sympathizers with what he's doing. But as soon as he invades, everybody quits speaking Russian. Go back to Ukrainian and speak Ukrainian.
Sure.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and so my small vocabulary that I'd learned was Russian words. So when I would go back in, I'd have to kind of back off, and I couldn't even use my normal Russian words that I knew anymore because I didn't want to offend anyone. It's like, we don't speak Russian anymore. We're back to Ukraine.
To Ukraine. Interesting.
So in Odessa, you were in Odessa a lot.
In Odessa, I've been probably more than any other region. That's probably, and I go in there regularly. I still go in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd assume that's got to be a pretty hot target for the Russians. It's a port city. It's on the Black Sea. It's a populous city.
Like we said, initially, it didn't seem like Putin was doing that much with the other large metropolitan areas. And I mean, he's ramped it up. And we don't hear a lot about this today. We did hear about. Well, let me insert the thing that really caused great despair for the Ukrainians was when they blew up the dam at the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
And all that water was released, and it went in and flooded all the fertile land and contaminated. And now it's like the reports are years and years and years before it'll be fertile. Ukraine,
and that's their export, right? Grain and
that's your
Ukraine.
Aren't they one of the largest
producer of world? Yeah. They're the breadbasket of the world. Yeah.
So we have seen that in the media. I saw that in the media, but it wasn't on every night.
Yeah.
But I know that what experiences can you share that maybe the Western media is not sharing with the rest of us?
Well, on that's when they just got deflated. The people got deflated. They lost hope. And then they went for a season where even some of the military guys were just, losing hope as well. It has since shifted back again.
Yeah.
But that was like a mighty, mighty blow to the Ukrainians. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was very discouraging. But the things that the positive, are you wanting me to talk about some of the positive things that I see, or no? You're asking about when it began to hit the other towns.
Here's what I want. Here's what I think our viewers want is like reality. Like we're getting a manufactured narrative from the media. Like what is the real? What is real from your perspective? Yeah. You've been there. You've been on the ground. You've seen it. Yeah. You painted a nice picture of Ukraine as the 1940s, the U.S., all that.
Yeah.
These are things that I haven't been there. I assume most people haven't been to Ukraine.
Right.
Paint the picture, and also what is it that we're being told that might not be what matches with your experiences and your perspective?
Well, the thing that's going on right now with the military is they're striking a little bit of everywhere, here, there, now and then. Makes no rhyme or reason, so that the people all over the country are just fearful because they know at any given moment a drone can come in. And we don't even know about it. We don't know why. We wouldn't expect it. Because before, they pretty well thought, okay, they're not going to hit here, or they're not going to hit there.
You're talking civilians.
I'm talking civilians now.
Yeah.
They're hitting.
And they're flying the smaller drones, not like the drones you think of with American military, right? Where they're up, 5,000 feet in the air, launching missiles, basically like an F-16 or whatever. But you're talking like small, like militarized drones that can hover and fly into in between buildings and all these crazy things.
Yeah, the only thing that makes them detectable is you can hear them.
They just sound like
but
they sound like bees.
They're pretty damn close by the time you hear them.
Oh,
It's too late. It's too late. Yeah, because my friend lives down close on the Black Sea, and they have a balcony out. The second story to have a balcony, and he's gone out a number of times, and it's in the dark of night, and he's recording, and you can hear him.
Oh, that's ominous.
And then all of a sudden over here.
Oh boy.
And they just drop bombs, or like what all these drones
well,
do?
again, I don't get me to be an expert on what they're carrying and all that. But
just from what the people have experienced.
They're hitting synagogues down, churches. In other words, it's just they've hit high-rise apartments. Just doesn't make a rhyme or reason. Yeah,
We don't see a lot of that.
See, there's civilian casualties now that are continuous at this point. And that's what's sad. And I don't know that we're really hearing that on the Western media,
I don't know, Jeff. Are you hearing this stuff?
Well, I think right now the Western media has shifted from Ukraine all in general because of the conflict going on with Israel and the Middle East.
Exactly.
I think
exactly.
Ukraine is no longer the hot button topic.
Exactly.
What's going on over here. So we completely forget that there's still a conflict over there.
That's right.
There's still something going on.
People know that.
Right.
Oh, of course.
They're not looking.
He's
at
great.
this.
They're not paying attention.
Yeah, good.
They're hitting what we might call insignificant towns. That really, why are you bombing this little town of Memphis?
Yeah, that's significant, but they still have a ton of civilians in them.
And that's it.
So they're not like big capital or like a Dallas Fort Worth or something like that, but they still have
And you said it
tens of
earlier.
thousands of
You
civilians.
said it earlier. You said that when they hit the dam, it crushed the will.
It did.
So by going into these little towns, you're just
More and more.
a little bit at a time. You're knocking the will of the people down.
While they're down.
It is.
Yeah.
So wow, this is
We've had the congregation there in Odessa. They've lost a number of members, and I was actually there ministering early in the war, and one of the young pastors had gotten called in by the draft, and his wife was actually Messianic Jew, and because of refugee status, she was able to get into Israel.
Oh, wow.
But he had to stay there and fight, and he lost his life.
yeah.
And so I'm in there. It was a scheduled event. I'm in there, and we're in this is a smaller congregation outside of Odessa. And I mean, probably not from where we are in the cameras. There she's sitting on the front row. Her husband just died. And I got to somehow minister to her.
Yeah, that's
What do you
tough.
say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the tragic part about it. She had lost a previous husband to the sickness and disease. So this was not the first
Oh,
one.
my goodness.
And, you know, it's just, you just feel it.
And how old was it?
Oh, he was young. He was probably in his early 30s. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. War is terrible.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the young people. Let me just add this. In 22, June of 22, because that's when a lot of the COVID vaccine restrictions were lifted and whatever, and you could fly again. And so they would always have this youth camp, conference camp in the Odessa area, and they would attract, because they had lots of relationships with churches all over the country, and they would attract a lot of kids come in, about 500 kids or so. Well, they couldn't do it in Odessa at that time because it was, you know, it was not safe.
Right.
But at that point, and I'm going to say this name wrong, and people will know it, Cherna Vista, something like.
Okay.
Did I say that right? Or am I getting that mixed up with the Moldovan?
You said it right as far as I
Cherna
know.
Vista. Yeah, okay. It's over on the western edge, just north of Romania. But they have a church and relationship there, so they had some property, so they moved the camp over there because it was safe there. They weren't doing anything there at that time. Okay.
Okay.
And so they asked us to come in and minister at the camp.
Yeah.
And so they've got property, but here's their facilities. Here's their dorms, tents.
Oh, no.
They bought a ton of tents, and they had a guys section, a girls section. Brought in a ton of little makeshift. They had to makeshift some showers for
Wow.
them and all this. But we had about 500 in. They were from all over Ukraine. But here was the sad thing. There are a lot of kids there that now were living in that area that were from the Donetsk region.
Oh.
And so as we began to talk to them and minister to them, one of them, just break your heart, one of them says, I said, hey, how can I minister? He goes, I just want to go home. And I'm looking at this kid, and he told me where he's from. And I'm looking at him, I'm realizing you don't even have a home there anymore. It's been leveled. And now I didn't say that to him.
No.
And your heart just breaks.
Oh, the humanity is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just want to go home. And it's like, you're not going to go home, son.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore. And just trying to minister. And we went in there for that week just trying to minister to those kids that were heartbroken and in fear and disturbed and didn't know what the next day was going to bring. Separated some from, their fathers are fighting in the war. And it was just disheartening, incredibly disheartening.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen in this. Nobody does.
Right.
But I would like to hear your opinion on where you think things are going or hopes. And also, when are you going? Because you're scheduled to go back there.
Yeah,
if I remember.
I'm headed back. Yeah. Yeah, I've continuously go in. Probably.
Do you have any fear?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I trust the people who are bringing me in, and I trust them to know how to take care of me. But obviously, anything could happen.
Of course.
But I really have not had any fear. And one time I was there and I had to go up into the northern section, ride trains, and that's where everybody thought I was an idiot when I'm riding this overnight train, and they're thinking, man, you're going to be out in the middle of anywhere, anything can happen. I go, well, but then they had to train me out and bus me out into Poland up on the north end, which was a route I'd not taken before. Things like that. No, I've not had any fear, and we're going to continue to go in, but I don't know. They've had hopes with different, and these probably have popped up in the current media. That there's some meetings going on. There's some discussion going on. There, even the Trump. There were some discussions even prior to Trump's election as president. There's some discussions concerning Putin and what he's going to do and not do. There's been thoughts that he's going to do this. People thought he agreed to something, and people thought he was going. And then as soon as they think that there's a little hope, all of a sudden, apartment building in their town is leveled. You know, and so they don't know. The people themselves don't know. They're still, I still get some blurps from them thinking, okay, maybe these next meetings with Trump something will happen, and then nothing happens from it.
There's psychological warfare going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's terrible.
Yeah.
It's the citizens that are paying the price.
Citizens don't know. They don't know where to put their hope other than the ones that are finding a relationship with Jesus and discovering that there's hope in him.
So a couple things. When do you go back? Where do you go back? And speaking of the hope, how is the spiritual, so we heard a lot about the physical and stuff, and a little bit about the mental. How's the spiritual component of that?
Well, I'm probably going to go in this fall again, and we will probably go, we'll normally always start in the Odessa region, and then we kind of spread out from there and do some other things. Here's the bright light in the midst of all of this. I said 1 million refugees first week, and then 2 million by the end of the month. And so the churches themselves obviously lost a lot of people, and most of them lost half of their people, rightly so, And but here's the churches I've been connected with and associated with. In fact, let me tell you this one story of Pastor Nikolaev. And of course, Nikolaev actually got hit early on too, before Odessa did. Nikolaev got hit heavy. Nikolaev was an old Navy port, and that's where they did the shipbuilding. It was in earlier years in Russia. It wasn't even on the map because they didn't want it to be known where it was.
Okay.
Oh, wow,
But modern day, it is on the map, Nikolaev, and it's a shipbuilding place. But anyway, the pastor there, that's the one with this 1,500 attending church. He would take his driver in his car, and go in and push it towards the east, and go find injured soldiers, pick them up in the car, and bring them back to the nearest hospital.
Wow.
Is that not just the craziest thing?
I mean, that's...
They're sitting there going, okay, what can we do?
What can we do?
What can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Yeah.
And he would do that. I don't know how long he did that, but he did that regularly.
Wow. What a great story. Those are stories we don't hear.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
But we need to hear more of those.
Yeah.
Heroes, for sure.
Yeah.
And
because they're heroes in the front lines, they never get the props.
That's it.
They never get it. And that's...
Yep.
The people, the humanity is unbelievable.
So a lot of the other churches I'm connected with, what they're doing is they've just stepped it up and they've said, okay, what can we do? Well, our region is not as destroyed as Eastern, so we're going to push in as far as we can and at least take things to them. Now, I've had pictures sent to me where they're all loaded up with what they're taking into the Eastern fair, and they're all in the armored vest. You know what I'm saying? Because they're taking all the precautions. But they're taking generators, they're taking food, they're taking water, they're taking clothing, they're taking everything they can possibly take to help those who have had total devastation, and doing whatever the need is, they're coming back, and they're sending, the one I'm connected with has a lot of U.S. financial support of their ministry. Okay. And so they're constantly saying, we need this. And so some of those funds are coming in. They're finding what the people are needing. They're purchasing them, and then they're sending those into the areas that are a little bit more devastated. But then they're also just ministering in their local areas, because as you can imagine, dad's no longer at work. Income is not what it used to be. And so they've got huge food pantries now, where they're finding ways to get food into, and they distribute that regularly just to the local people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners, like we talked about, there's aid and all that, but for our listeners, what is needed? How can they help? How can they help advance the kingdom? How can they help you? How can they help you help them? How can they directly help? Is it best to go through these established? What's needed? What do the people need?
Yeah.
Other than prayer.
Right.
I know
on the
prayer.
financial situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me, I constantly am sending in some support myself. Not much, but I do a percentage of what I can. And so, and then I do have some people that are sowing into our ministry, and then for the purpose of sowing it into what's going on there. And so I funnel a lot of funds myself. Okay, I can do that. But also the organization, the ministry there that where my base is, they have opportunities to where you can funnel money into them directly. Okay, they take a little bit of a hit because of the transfer rates through their system, which it is what it is, But there's a couple different ways, and maybe we can put that information up on your.
You can put that information up, yes.
And so that they can find that.
Absolutely.
And to be clear, so like the audience knows, you're given to ministries, directly to ministries, right?
Right.
Not necessarily to Ukraine or to the conflict itself, but you're given to the people who are helping the people and the civilians of Ukraine.
Yeah, because you're right, and that's a good point, because we know in any situation like this, there are agencies that pop up and say, hey, give us your funds because we're sending them to Ukraine. And I know people are just, the last thing they're thinking of is all of my money going to Ukraine?
Yeah.
Or is any of it going to Ukraine?
And that's the general consensus here in America. And it was like through following 2020 it just felt like every other week the government was like, we need to send more money to Ukraine, right? Fires in Maui. Well, let's send $6 billion to Ukraine.
Where's it going?
Floods in North Carolina or South Carolina. Let's send money to Ukraine. And everybody's like, why?
Right.
Why are we doing this? We have stuff going on here.
Right.
But, to give directly to a ministry. And guys like this pastor who's driving in and picking up soldiers.
Yes.
Making sure that these guys are trying to stay healthy, trying to stay living, and also just keeping in mind that there's for instance, we talked about Ukraine being the breadbasket. Their resources in terms of food and things like that have been severely limited, and in a lot of cases devastated from this war. So they need as much help. The civilians need as much help to be able to live through the ongoing conflict.
Exactly. And that is that's some of the positive stuff that we're watching that is taking place and going. In fact, I actually got one of the last time I was there, I actually got to be part of the food distribution. I said I want to be part of that. I want to step in and do that. It wasn't much. All I did was grab food bags and hand them to someone. I just wanted to be part of that hands-on ministering to people who are in need. But here's the other aspect. I told you the churches, they lost like half of their congregation. I'm telling you, in a time of tragedy, difficulty, when people are without hope, the gospel message gives them hope.
Yes.
And so not only are they meeting those physical needs, but they're presenting the gospel and they're telling people, look, the only place we can put our hope is in Jesus. And people are coming to the Lord and people are becoming believers and are gathering in those churches. They're finding hope. They're finding encouragement. They're finding family. They're finding fellowship. And now, and this has been going on now for a couple of years. Now the churches are full and overflowing. They're larger than they were back in the day.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm blown away by that.
It's tragedy and darkness brings about revival.
Yeah. And that's what's happening.
Light shines brightest in the darkness.
It's exactly. And so that's the positive thing. In fact, I just saw they had just completed all their summer activities, and they had more youth, and they did children's camps, youth camp. They had more youth and children in their camps that they sponsored throughout the summer than they have in a number of years. And so they're being very effective.
That's fantastic.
In what God's called them to do.
Well, I do think it's good to end on a positive note, and that's a very positive note.
Yeah.
And we will continue. We'll ask our listeners to send prayers for you, for your ministry, for the people of Ukraine, and for hope. We do also want to say, I want to say this like personally, it's like we're in the beautiful Roxo Media House studios that are available to people out there. And we are so thankful for Roxo Media House to allow us to come in to work on this. I'd also like to extend to our audience, like our mission at Mission Liberty, right? The mission is liberty. And our mission is to do this and to have people like you come in and share and try to get past the noise to the truth of the matters. But this is a to be continued story, Ukraine. So if we have listeners out there and we have people that if you have information, you can get to us. We will read every single email at info. info@mission-liberty.com. Send your emails. If you have stuff to add, if you have stuff to contribute, there's nothing saying that we won't bring you in and bring Paul back, and we'll have these discussions and take this to the next step, because this chapter is not written in the Ukraine.
Right.
And so we're hoping for better things. We want participation from our listeners. We don't want passive listeners just listening for entertainment. We want engaged people to participate as part of a member of our group and our community to help build this and take this to a more enlightened level. We're looking for enlightenment, not entertainment, and that's what we have. So I would like to, on behalf of Mission Liberty, thank you for coming in, sharing your info and knowledge. And I guess just till next time, we are definitely want to have you back.
Okay.
We're going to have you back for some other segments on other topics, for sure. And possibly to have you back after you go to Ukraine. Maybe you'll come back.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll
Share those stories.
Yeah. Share the other stories you have. We'd love to know more about this pastor that's going into and doing the honorable things.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so thank you.
Excellent.
We appreciate
Very good.
it.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for
And,
inviting me.
and we'll leave it at that until next time. And again, thank you.